What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Elestrals Moonrise reveal reaction video. Now, I swear to you, I did not take like 10 takes to get that intro right. I swear to you, I did not do that. It's fine. So, that's the first thing. Second thing, I know this video is late. I'm actually recording this on the day that this video has been released to the public. I didn't actually watch it the day before. Reason being, I didn't have time to. I was very, very busy yesterday. I had work. I had some friends that really wanted to like do stuff, and I was like, I'm not gonna take up the chance to not play with friends. I was in a bit of a precarious position. I also had some homework I had to do and stuff like that. So I just didn't have time. So I'm recording this one on the day of. So it's gonna be a little bit late coming out, but we are here. We get the very first starter deck release in the Posthumoose starter deck. We're also getting Moonrise. We've already seen Moonrise due to the leaks. This is a shorter video, and I think we've seen most of the cards here, but let's see if we can get some information about the actual starter deck. So without further ado, let's get straight on into the video.
Today we're revealing a brand new starter deck and one of the best searchers we've ever had in Elestrals. This is our countdown of 32 days until Moonrise pre-orders open on November 15th. Let's get it.
Yep, so we already know about Moonrise. It is a really good searcher.
Don't forget, you get these reveals a day early if you back our Kickstarter, so don't forget to back us, Elestrals Clash. But let's talk about it, man. We're going to get this kicked off with the brand new starter deck, Posthumoose. I'm so excited for this Elestral. You guys saw it early in Shattered Stars with this incredible stained glass art. And I got to give a shout outs to Bex, our artist, for coming to me with this design. I absolutely love it. One of my favorite designs of the set. And I think this card is a lot more powerful than people give it credit for, but it is going to be the highlight of our other Moonrise starter deck. So let's walk.
So I want to talk about what he said, because obviously we already know what Posthumoose does. We've seen it in Shattered Stars. We've known it for a while. For anyone who does not know, let's quickly just read its effect based on the stained glass version, wherever the stained glass version is.
For coming to me with this design, I have with this
incredible. There it is. So Posthumoose is a 13/11 3-drop lunar that says when your Artemis suppresses a card, you can target and destroy a card. And while Artemis is enchanted, this Posthumoose is unaffected by counter runes. I'm a little skeptical that this card's going to be good, and the only reason I think that is because it is a 3-drop. 3-drops, even now with like the Lava Lith being limited and all that, aren't really seeing that much play. 2-drops are starting to see a little bit more play. 3-drops, though, since they are still a little bit more susceptible to removal, like Earthquake and Resting. I know those cards are now limited, but we're getting even more removal in Moonrise in the form of the Lunar Phase card. Granted, in order to deal with Posthumoose with the Lunar Phase card, what was it, New Moon? Yeah, New Moon. In order to deal with it with Lunar Phase New Moon, you have to spend 4, which, to be fair, isn't like a low cost, so maybe you won't do that. It does feel bad to do it, but at the end of the day, it is still removal for this card, so that's sort of the idea. But Posthumoose is a card that definitely could potentially have some interesting applications. They're really trying to make it so that Artemis is like a really, really powerful card, and for that, I actually do appreciate that. I think giving cards this sort of text where they really synergize with the Divine Rune very, very well is actually very, very good. So I think Posthumoose is a well-designed card. I'm just a little skeptical that it's going to see play just due to the fact that it is a 3-drop. We don't know its Ascension line, though, so we're going to see that. Well, we know one. We know Fawnlet, but we don't know what its Ascension line actually is.
And I got to give a shout-outs to Bex, our artist, for coming to me with this design. I absolutely love it. One of my favorite designs of the set. And I think this card is a lot more powerful than people give it credit for, but it is going to be the highlight of our other Moonrise starter deck. So let's walk through the starter deck Elestrals, and I'm going to give you guys some special treats as well, so don't you worry. But we're going to kick it off with Fawnlet. Fawnlet is so crucial because it allows you to search out your Artemis on normal cast, and it also gets a defense buff for every Lunar Spirit enchanting your Artemis. So Artemis, the incredible suppression divine tool that allows you to pinpoint different...
Well, there's Artemis's art. We kind of already knew what Artemis's art what looked like due to the Elestrals Clash trailer, because Artemis wasn't in there. Still very, very cool to see that. I pause it again.
Cards in the field and turn off their effects. Fawnlet is crucial to get that search going. You can also search out Theraheart, its Ascension, which I know a lot of people have been waiting to see revealed.
Yeah,
that is a brand new Lunar Elestral with 2 Lunar Spirits, 6 attack, 4 defense, and it says when a player activates a counter rune, you can disenchant 2 Lunar Spirits from your Artemis in order to negate that rune. Then you may special ascend this Theraheart to Posthumoose from your hand or deck. So this can turbo you into your 3-cost Posthumoose by simply disenchanting 2 spirits.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. So, clearly this is supposed to be a card that is very similar to Chains of Prometheus. And Chains of Prometheus doesn't see play. And the main reason behind why it doesn't see play, one, it's a 2 cost. Secondly, it's not Omni, it's fire only. And to be fair, Theraheart is lunar only, and it's also in the form of a 2-drop Elestral, so maybe it's not like the best thing in the world. But to be entirely honest, this to me seems a little better than Chains of Prometheus for the sole reason that not only does it not expend spirits, it disenchants them from an Artemis that you're already using on the board. Granted, it's 2, so you have to get if you enchant on the Artemis, and for 3 and activate the effect to negate a counter rune, then you special ascend into your Posthumoose. You can't use the Artemis's effect to suppress anything unless you want to get rid of the Posthumoose's protection effect. So realistically, you only have 1 activation of this card. 1 activation of Artemis, specifically, since the Theraheart does have to disenchant too. Now, this is very expensive because you have to have Artemis on your board. You have to find a way to ascend into Theraheart, which is very much easier said than done because you can't special ascend it. Fawnlet does not have an effect that allows it to special ascend, but the Theraheart is searchable, so as long as you are able to keep your Fawnlet alive, then you can bring it out. And to be entirely honest, Fawnlet might just be used to search the Theraheart over the Artemis in most cases, because you have stuff like Elechick and Plucky that can search your Artemis anyway. So I think that to the fact that this card is searchable and it is a body that can ascend into a bigger body is actually pretty powerful, and that's why I think it's better than Chains of Prometheus. Granted, you realistically are only getting this effect off once, and maybe twice if you choose to not ascend into your Posthumoose. But if you do that, then the Artemis, you can't use the Artemis's effect, and you have to enchant 4. You're removing 4. To be fair as well, this is not a once per turn effect. It's a 1 effect, so it's not once per turn. So if your opponent, for example, if your opponent, on resolution of the summon of Theraheart, activates Poison Tipped Arrow, and you activate Theraheart's effect to negate the PTA, and then let's say as Chain Link 3, they go Gorgon's Gaze, you can then go Theraheart as Chain Link 4 again to negate the Gorgon's Gaze. It's not once per turn, it's not once per chain, it's none of that. So this card does actually have a pretty good amount of protection. You have to get it out. I think once you get it out, it's actually not that bad. Getting the Posthumoose out, I like this card a lot. I think this card has a lot of potential, and now that I've seen this, Posthumoose actually genuinely might see play, because this is very, very powerful. This is very, very powerful. It's just going to be a question of how effective can you be at getting Theraheart onto the board. Because if you can't get Theraheart onto the board consistently enough, with an Artemis enchanted, then you're in a bit of a pickle. So that's sort of the idea. I think this card is really, really cool. I think it actually has a lot going for it. Now, I do actually want to say one thing. Actually, no, no. I'll say it at the end of the video because there's not going to be anything about any of these cards. I want to talk about a couple of other cards. But let's get into the remainder of the video. Then I'll talk about those
from your Artemis, and your Fawn that is going to search that out. You can also utilize this effect to stop your own counter runes. So if you really wanted to turbo ascend into your Posthumoose, you could activate the effect yourself. It's a little bit more expensive to do it that way in terms of...
I didn't think about that. To be fair, he's saying it's more expensive. I agree, and just for that, I don't think it's worth it. I think if you want to turbo out Posthumoose, I don't really think you need to, if I'm being entirely honest, because Theraheart is a counter rune negation, and the most prevalent card, most powerful cards in the game are the counter runes. So if your opponent could potentially choose to not activate any counter runes, but if they do that, they're really missing out on some of the best and most powerful cards in the game, and that's going to put them at a disadvantage. So yeah, sure, you might not get Posthumoose out from the Theraheart effect, but they can't activate counter runes anymore, because if they do, you're threatening the Posthumoose. So I don't think you actually have to activate the effect with your own counter runes. I don't think it's good if you do it that way. I think it's totally fine to just leave it on board and wait for your opponent to activate one. Because if they don't, just by you having Theraheart on board, you're threatening a Posthumoose. And even if your opponent doesn't play into the Posthumoose, guess what they can't do? Activate counter runes. It's basic, and that basically makes Theraheart Jinzo in that case. So I think this card is really good for that reason.
Spirit efficiency, but it can be done. Theraheart, a very powerful 2-cost ascension tool. And you guys already know about Posthumoose, a brand new Elestral. I love this card art, by the way. It's so incredible. Yes. The artwork across the entire set depicting Posthumoose is truly brilliant. 13 attack, 11 defense, and it says that when your Artemis suppresses a card, you can target and destroy that card. Incredibly powerful destruction that you essentially get once per turn as your Artemis works to shut off cards across the field. While Artemis is enchanted, this Posthumoose is unaffected by counter runes, much like Wasp-5.
Yeah, so the one thing that I'm noticing about this whole Ascension line is that it's making it so Artemis is going to be losing its spirits very, very fast, because you go Fawnlet to potentially search an Artemis or a Theraheart. Once you get Theraheart out on board, you have to disenchant 2 from the Artemis in order to ascend into the Posthumoose. And once you have Posthumoose out, Posthumoose requires you to attempt to suppress something with the Artemis in order to destroy it. And the thing is, you want to keep Artemis enchanted. So therefore, if that spirit that you're disenchanting from the Artemis is the last spirit on it, the Artemis will leave, and the Posthumoose no longer has any form of protection, which is very bad, especially since Artemis cannot go after the back row, so therefore Posthumoose cannot blow up back row. Can only blow up Elestrals because Artemis is going to suppress an Elestral. So that's sort of the idea. I think the goal, and he's going to talk about Comalus, I think the goal here is basically go Fawnlet into like Theraheart or Fawnlet into Artemis, whatever. Enchant your Artemis, use the Comalus effect to Nexus 2 onto an Artemis so that you can get this effect off multiple times. The issue with that, in my opinion, though, is the fact that you have to... Typically, the Divine Runes are the Nexus banks, not the cards that you want to Nexus to. If that's the case, then we need another good Nexus bank for Lunar in order to get this effect off multiple times. I don't think we're going to have that. Therefore, I think this whole deck is a little underpowered for that reason. At the same time, though, you technically don't need to use the first effect of Posthumoose. You don't have to disenchant from your Artemis to suppress anything to get a destruction unless that's absolutely something you need to do. I think realistically what you want to do is just leave the Posthumoose out on board with an Artemis that's just enchanted, and you never use the Artemis's effect. You just keep the Artemis enchanted so that you get the protection. I think that's sort of the idea and the better way to play the deck, but we'll see.
Heavy's effect, this card cannot be touched. It does not shift to defense with Tsunami. It does not get bounced back by Shield or Gorgon's Gaze. Cannot stop its attacks. Posthumoose is a force to be reckoned with in Moonrise when paired with Artemis, and that is partially due to a new Elestral that we are revealing as well. As part of this, it will be featured in the starter deck, and I highlighted this in the Fulgorix video. These starter decks are incredible, man. I cannot wait to reveal the full list for them because I think you guys are going to be like, wow, I can't believe they made these starter decks so good. But we really want to make the experience for new players so incredibly stellar. Comalus comes to Moonrise, a brand new Elestral, a Nexus form of Comagma, 4 attack and 2 defense, 1 cost Lunar. It says that you can Nexus up to 2 Lunar Spirits. When you do, you can search your deck for a Spectral Elestral and add it to your hand. Spectral Elestrals getting the search treatment here with the Nexus Elestral Comagma.
So I've already talked about I talked about this card in the Moonrise was leaked video. I want to point out this card is good, and it's very similar to another card in the game called Exaltus. The difference between them is that Comalus adds a Spectral, whereas Exaltus adds a Celestial. However, another quick difference, Comalus has 4 attack, while Exaltus only has 3. Is this card better than Exaltus? I think yes. The issue with the Exalt cards is that they all have 3 attack, and they do really, really cool things. They have very, very powerful effects, but the fact that they only have 3 attack makes it so that they don't stick on the board often enough for you to activate the effect multiple times. Comalus at a 4 attack will stick on the board because there aren't that many things that can attack over a Comalus. And if you want to attack over it, you have to use a 5, and if you don't have a 5, you have to use a 4, and that only crashes with you. So it's very, very difficult to actually out the Comalus in comparison to a to an Exaltus. So therefore, Comalis is a much, much better card. It's the exact same card, except it adds a different type of card, but it adds a type of card that Lunar wants rather than something Solar wants, and it's an additional 1 attack. Comalis will see play. I can almost guarantee you that.
Malice, this card is going to be a monster. Not only does it have the ability to move spirits around your field to get more damage off or to activate receive effects, but that search is incredibly powerful because much like Exaltus in Solar and Daybreak being able to search out the ethereal Elestrals, Comalis searches out the spectral Elestrals, and that's not just bound to one spirit Elestrals. You can search things like Specterus, you can search things like Posthumoose, and you can even search Farrageist and plenty more.
I'll be honest, I think if you're searching Posthumoose or Farrageist, then you're in a bad spot. I can see potentially searching Farrageist because you can Nexus 1 onto the Comalis, search for Farrageist, and that sets you up for an Ascension next turn. I could potentially see that, but I don't really think that that's the way to do it. Maybe it is. That could potentially, to be entirely honest, now that I'm saying it out loud, it doesn't sound terrible. But I'm a little skeptical, I gotta say. I'm a little skeptical that that's gonna be how this works, but we'll see.
Or Elestrals that we're gonna be revealing in these Moonrise reveals. So get super excited for the Posthumoose starter deck, a must get when Moonrise drops. Man, this is exciting. Big shouts to everybody who's been supporting on Kickstarter. You can check the links in the description below, and don't forget our reveals are dropped 1 day early for our Kickstarter backers. So
now we're just in the outro. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of things. So, I'll do a quick recap after I talk about this, but there are a couple of things I wanted to say. Early on in the video, around like the 120 something mark, I mentioned, I don't remember exactly what card I was thinking of. I mentioned I wanted to talk about a specific card, and I don't remember what that card was. So we're going to move back past that point. We're going to actually talk about another thing that I almost forgot. At the end of yesterday's episode, where we were talking about all the lunar phases and stuff like that, I mentioned that I didn't really have much of a good grasp of the lunar phases because I felt like it was something that you realistically had to like play and build a deck around in order to get a good understanding of how the deck functioned, how good it was, and stuff like that. So, therefore, I actually went ahead and added these cards in the Tabletop Simulator, tried to build a deck. Granted, we don't have all the cards from Moonrise, so maybe I built the deck a little bit wrong, and I tested it out a bit. One thing I have to say about that deck, I am struggling to believe that the deck is super good, but it's a very interesting deck, and Voldust can be a very, very big problem. Potentially for the deck. It's a very hard card to out. If you just sit on it, you're just constantly drawing cards until you draw your entire deck. You're in a good spot if you just have Voldusk, but I don't think the Volclips line is actually as powerful as it could potentially be seen. So I don't think it's going to be a huge meta contender. I hope I'm wrong about that because the cards seem very, very interesting. And to be honest, again, I'm probably building the deck wrong. Ratios are probably wrong. So that's like, it's hard to really like understand how the deck is supposed to play right now. It's a difficult deck to play because it's a difficult deck to build. It's a very, very difficult deck to build because you have to use different deck building principles. You have to play like 3 Voldusk, 2 Volumbra, 1 or 2 Volclips. I'm saying since you can shuffle the Volclips back into your deck with, I think it was Waning Gibbous or something like that. In order to search for a Voldusk, I'm playing 2 Volclips just in case one gets outed because you do have ways to just put it back in the deck in case you actually accidentally hard draw it. So there's that. But the issue with it is that after you have those 7 cards, quote unquote, 6-7 cards-ish, you are in a position where the remainder of your deck is going to have to be filled with the lunar phases, and some of them are really good. Like I'm playing 3 copies of New Moon, the removal spell, 3 copies of the Voldust Searcher. I'm playing 3 copies of the Ambrosia one. That's already up to 16 cards. And then there's 5 more lunar phases where I'm playing 2 copies of 2 of the remaining ones, and 1 copy of the other ones. That puts it at an additional 7 cards. You're at 23 cards. I throw in 3 Ambrosia. That's at 26. And now I have to run. I was thinking like the deck very much functions around. I feel like the deck is very, very much better if you play Temple of the Moon. So I'm playing 3 Jolton, 2 Temple of the Moon. That is now 31 cards. I throw in the 3 Tsunami for the reasons I mentioned in the video. That's 34 cards. And now it's like, well, what are the remaining cards going to be filled with? I wanted a bit more removal, so I threw in PTA, so 37. And I wanted a bit more consistency in searches, so I threw in Astrabbit. So that's the weird part about that. The counter rune lineup is very strange because of deck space. Like, I only found space for 3 Tsunami, 3 PTA. And that was it. Like, I couldn't fit Gorgon's Gaze. I couldn't fit Shield. I couldn't fit Alter like I really wanted to do. There was a lot going on that was very, very difficult for me to fit into the deck because of the amount of lunar phases that you're playing. So the deck space in lunar phase is very much it's very tight, and that's one of the reasons why I think the deck is not the best. Deck space in lunar phase is unbelievably tight. And that makes it slightly worse for the most part. So that's sort of the idea. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's good. I hope I'm just building the decks kind of wrong. But like, it's very, very hard to build decks. So that's sort of the idea. That being said, that's sort of my ideas around Volclips. Let's move on to the actual starter deck. So first things first, and I'm noticing Posthumoose on here looks different than the Posthumoose that we saw. This has got to be either Stellar Posthumoose or Full Art Posthumoose. Crazy. Very much looking forward to that. And if we move on in, we do have the Fawnlet. Should also be noted this card does get +1 defense for each lunar enchanting each Artemis in the field, so it can get up very high in the defense value, because if you just search the Artemis and then activate it with 3, you now have a 5 defense body that you can just basically sit on for a good chunk of time. So it's actually a good body, hard to out. We move on to Theraheart. Theraheart, this card is actually crazy. This card is very, very powerful. It's just a very good card to help you negate counter runes, and then it automatically ascends in the Posthumoose. It's a counter rune negation that threatens Posthumoose should you get into it, and obviously we've seen the Posthumoose. Very good card. If you are able to turbo this card out very consistently, I think this card will be a force to be reckoned with and will be very, very powerful. And we obviously already know about the Artemis being able to enchant a bunch of cards to itself. And then the only other card I want to talk about is Comalis. Thinking about it now, I actually do think this card is going to be crazy due to the fact that it can search Pharaoh Geist, which is one of the most powerful cards in the game as of right now. It's just sort of lacking consistency because there's not enough lunars in the game. I expect Pharaoh Geist to actually be a very, very playable deck in the upcoming Moonrise meta. Just due to the fact that Comalis exists, it can nexus one to itself, set up an ascension, and you search a Pharaoh Geist. So all you have to do is have your Comalis survive one turn, and you have Pharaoh Geist out to the board just like that. So that's very, very powerful. I very much expect this card to be very, very much played, and I probably expect Pharaoh Geist to be either banned or limited at one point in the near future, because I think that card is very powerful and probably needs a bit of a nerf. But guys, this is a late upload, but I really hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure you slap that like button and subscribe for more. Hope to see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.